An estate plan is the greatest gift you're ever going to give your family. It not only preserves your assets so that you can pass on the fruits of all of your hard work over the course of your lifetime, but it also is an amazing tool to preserve relationships between those that you leave behind.
Hi, this is Jerry Pletica with Touching Hearts at Home here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Recently, I was at a health fair here in the area, and an estate lawyer, Linda Roberts-Ross, spoke about how important it is to get your estate plan in place as soon as possible. This is great content I'm sure you will appreciate.
My name is Linda Roberts-Ross. I am an attorney. I've been doing estate planning for approximately 25 years. I'm licensed in California, Washington, and Idaho. I still have a practice in California. Don't hate me. But I came to practice law as a result of one of those curveballs that life throws. And that was my mother was killed by her HMO, a medical malpractice. If anybody knows California, you've probably heard Kaiser Permanente. Yeah. So in 1991, and the reason I am so passionate about estate planning is because my parents were born in the 30s. They came up during a time when there were no 401ks and no IRAs or anything like that. Those didn't really come into being until around the 1990s. And so their retirement plan was to acquire residential rental property. And they did phenomenally well. My mother never graduated from high school. At 14, she had to go out and go to work during the Depression. She was the only cash resource income for her family of 6. My dad finished high school, went off to Korea for a couple of years, and came back, and then he and my mom met. But they were, despite lack of formal education, they were still, to this day, I have never met anybody smarter than my parents. So, and that's the reason my name is hyphenated for them. So, in any case, so their retirement plan was to have these residential rental income properties that would generate their retirement income. So, like I said, they did phenomenally well. I don't know if anybody here knows Southern California very well at all, but they lived in an area called Lake Elsinore down in Riverside County. Okay, so those properties were in Lake Elsinore. And I helped my dad build the foundations for a couple of them because it wasn't where they hired contractors to build these things. They bought the raw land, they put in all the infrastructure, they built the foundations, and then they found houses in the LA area that were then moved out and placed on the foundations that they built. They remodeled them all themselves. They did everything. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over a lot of years. So when my mom passed away, all of those 12 properties were in her name because my mom and dad had divorced about 3 years before her death. So they had a friendly divorce where all of the properties were transferred to her because she'd always managed all the funds and the financial stuff in the family. My dad was the guy out there cranking and doing it, and she did as well, but she had a real knack for it. I tell people she had, she could stretch a dollar till you could see through it. Any case, so when she passed away, there was no estate plan. There was nothing. There was no will. There was no trust. They didn't think they had enough assets to justify any kind of estate planning because that's the era they came up in. So anyway, so it all went to probate. It all went to probate in Riverside County. That probate lasted 10 years, and nobody in the family got a dime. One of those properties was a 6.5 acre flat top hill ring with 150 foot tall eucalyptus trees with a 270 degree view of the lake, already subdivided into 1 acre lots. And for whatever reason, and the probate court says that they sold that for $17,000. And she was offered $200,000 cash for it prior to 1991, and she rejected it as a ridiculously low offer. It was an insulting offer. I recently had a conversation with a realtor down there in that area and said, because not to add salt to the wound or anything, but he said today those properties would be worth $500 million. So that's why, obviously, I believe in estate planning. Our goal as we were going through that horrible, awful probate for 10 years was to get it back to my dad because it represented his entire life's work. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. He passed 5 years later and never having seen a dime. So this area of legal practice is one of the few, there's only two that I'm aware of, where people feel good about doing what they're going to need to do and don't hate the attorney for having to come to an attorney. Estate planning provides peace of mind. And the other area is adoptions. Everybody's happy when there's an adoption. So I got tired of doing a lot of family law, which is, fighting all the time about everything. And I went into estate planning. And the family law stuff served me well in the information and knowledge I needed about how the state treats property amongst spouses and all that kind of stuff. But an estate plan is the greatest gift you're ever going to give your family. It not only preserves your assets so that you can pass on the fruits of all of your hard work over the course of your lifetime, but it also is an amazing tool to preserve relationships between those that you leave behind. If there's no estate plan, then everybody is going to be fighting. And there's this interesting phenomenon that happens when, particularly, a parent dies. I think some of us here are old enough to remember the Tom and Dick Smothers show. Tom and Dick Smothers Brothers. The running joke in that show was Tommy, the supposed to be the idiot who was very, very brilliant apparently, and Dick, the older brother. Tommy was always running off with this statement, "Mom always loved you best." And that's what happens in a probate action, or where a situation where there's no instruction from the person who's died what is supposed to happen to their stuff. And there's a subconscious psychological dynamic that starts taking place that okay, we're going to, depending on what I get out of the estate, I'm going to feel now that I was equally loved by, mom or dad or whoever. And I tell them, no, folks, that's not probate. That's called therapy, So this is just about dividing stuff. You're not going to get all your childhood slights with your siblings all sorted out in this process. And if there's an estate plan, they don't even have to deal with that. They know that this is what mom and dad did, and this is what they have instructed us to do. And most people will feel honor bound to do that. Not all, but most. And the ones that don't feel that way, guess what? You're just SOL. Because it's in writing. The person you have appointed to administer your estate, as you've told them to do, they are fiduciaries to you. They owe you the highest obligation of honesty and integrity and faithfulness that the law can impose on anyone. So in doing all of that, there are various aspects and parts of that puzzle.
This is Jerry Pletica with Touching Hearts at Home here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. For more great content, please subscribe.